Welcome to Puro Politics, the political podcast of the San Antonio Express News. My name is Gilbert Garcia, Metro columnist, and I'm joined by
business editor and columnist Greg Jefferson,
reporter Brian Chasnoff.
Well, I almost forgot my title. I was gone for a week, and it doesn't take long to just start forgetting what you actually do at the paper. But I was able to pull that together.
Your mind is still at Garner State Park.
Yeah, there you go. A lot going on right now, and one of the things that we're going to find out about more about later in the week is the unveiling of the proposed city budget. Sometimes these, when these rollouts happen, it's kind of uneventful and kind of predictable. This year, I think it's actually going to be really interesting because the revenue is way down, and I'm really curious to see how the city is going to pull this off. But that's something we're going to learn about, and as later on this week. But I wanted to start off talking a little bit about the school issue, because I think this is really the big issue in Texas and throughout the country right now, because there's so much uncertainty about what schools are going to do in response to COVID-19. And we haven't gotten a lot of help from state officials. We had the Texas Education Agency initially saying that schools had 3 weeks they could go online only for 3 weeks and then kind of figure things out. And then they upped it to 4 weeks. There was a suggestion that they had to do in person after that, and any kind of hybrid plan that involved staggered schedules or anything like that wasn't going to work if schools wanted to hold on to their funding. Then the TA reversed itself and became more flexible about it, and Governor Greg Abbott seemed to be on line with that. And then just last Tuesday, we got non-binding legal guidance from Attorney General Ken Paxton saying that Metro health officials could not shut schools down or prevent them from opening to in-person instruction. And in San Antonio on July 17th, we'd had Metro Health basically saying that the schools could not be open, the campuses could not be open till September 7th. So after that, TEA reversed itself and basically aligned itself with Ken Paxton, and Greg Abbott has done the same. So in the short term, the schools had planned to have in-person or online instruction for the first several weeks anyway. So it's probably not going to affect that, but where there's so much uncertainty about what we're going to do after that. I wanted to start off, Brian, I know that we've both got kids who are school age, and this is something that a lot of people are grappling with now. Like when you look at all the confusion that's happening with this and how you're navigating your own situation, what do you make of this?
What's frustrating for me is that preventing outbreaks is expressly one of the things that Metro Health has the authority to do. If you look at the Texas Health and Safety Code. Right. So I was confused by Paxton's insistence and which Greg Abbott eventually agreed to, that you can only quarantine, schools after an infection occurs.
Right.
So to me, it seems, and also my first reaction was we're potentially going to have a patchwork in Bexar County of schools that are open, schools that are closed, and it's going to be left up to school boards to make those decisions, right?
Right, and you've also got some superintendents talking about the possibility of filing lawsuits because they're looking at their situation thinking, we want to prevent, the spread of this virus, and we shouldn't have to put our state funding at risk. So, and to create some context, there was University of Texas study that was recently cited by the New York Times, looking at different school districts based on current infection rates and how many students we would expect to find at schools in those counties that would be infected. And the estimate for Bexar County is that in a school of 1,000 students, you would potentially have 15 who would come in infected. So this is what we're dealing with.
And just with I don't want my kids to have to continue with remote learning any more than anyone else does, because everyone knows that they hate it. But I mean, they do. It's painful for everyone. But what's the alternative? I mean, risk infection and an outbreak in our family. I mean, that's not acceptable. So,
yeah. What do you mean?
Yeah, I mean, it has a whole other. I no longer have school age kids, so I can take a colder, more nuanced approach to it.
Right.
If you talk to any employer, I talked to a couple for my column last week, couple of tech entrepreneurs, and they have all of their employees working from home now, and they will for the foreseeable future. But I mean, they have some real questions about whether, okay, well, I mean, what am I going to do with my kids? So they may be at home. They're supposed to be doing their jobs, but they don't know, what's, are they going to have to be shuttling kids to class at some point? I mean, they, almost to a person, their employees really don't have a solid idea of what their kids' school years are going to be like. And that's massively disrupting in a workplace, especially, now home is for a lot of people the new office, and this kind of derails them a little bit.
Yeah, and as you all were saying, I mean, there really are no good solutions. It's so complicated. Clearly, the quality of education isn't going to be the same online. The social engagement is missing. So, I mean, I have a daughter who's 15. She just finished her freshman year. Nearly half of her freshman year in high school was done, remotely. And it pains me to think that a good part of her high school experience may not be a real high school experience. But at the same time, we're all really worried about, the safety of our kids and the spread of the virus. So it's a very tough situation. And it always seemed to me that the plan that made sense was to trust in local school districts and metro, health officials, and allow them to deal with the situations as they saw fit. And I think that what we're seeing with Ken Paxton and the Texas Education Agency is basically just following, what he put out.
And of course, the issue's been politicized by the Trump administration, right? Because they're saying unequivocally that schools need to reopen.
Oh yeah, I mean, Trump has a tweet this morning, once again saying if we didn't have so much testing, we wouldn't have so many COVID-19 cases. Oh my God. Oh, by the way, open the schools. That was like the last line of the tweet. So yeah, it's like become ridiculously, dangerously politicized.
And I know a million people have made this point, but the argument that we get more cases because of testing is comparable to saying that if women didn't take pregnancy tests, we would have no babies born in this country. And so it's just such an obviously ridiculous statement.
Not to mention the fact that testing is how you suppress the virus. That's the first thing you do. It's just really concerning. Yeah.
And on that, along those lines, he tends to make the argument that the more we know about this, the worse it makes him look, or it skews the numbers in some ways. But as you said, Brian, I mean, the reality is the more we know, the better we're able to deal with this. And along those lines, you did a story last week. We didn't have a podcast last week, so we didn't get a chance to talk about it. But you had a Sunday story looking at how San Antonio has really struggled to I guess have the necessary number of people investigating cases and sort of tracking contacts for people who are infected and trying to slow the spread. I mean, what did you find when you worked on this story?
Well, as everyone who lives here is aware, in March and April and for a lot of May, the infection rates here in Bexar County were relatively low. And it was also during that period when the mayor and the county judge convened a health transition team of medical experts, public health experts, who recommended that Metro Health get 175 case investigators working. And these are the people who would be calling patients who test positive for COVID-19, spend some time on the phone with them, get a list of their close contacts, over the previous 48 hours or so, folks who might have been exposed to the virus. And that's how you do contact tracing. And you then the next phase is you call those people who potentially were exposed, and you give them information and you warn them and tell them to self-quarantine and get tested and all that. And that's the basic tool to contain any contagion. But what we found through these emails between Metro Health officials were, I guess, sort of the reasons that they never ramped up to 175 case investigators. Even in June, there were only 25 working at that time.
Wow. And
we sort of were able to pinpoint the moment when just sort of the dawning realization that Bexar County was in deep trouble, because suddenly the cases exploded here, and it was sort of a mad scramble to get some more case investigators working when we should have had those a month.
Why was there such a lackadaisical approach?
So one of the emails we found was kind of telling. Our listeners are probably aware that Don Emmerich was the former Metro Health director who resigned in late June. And we found an email where Don was trying to recruit and train some volunteers to do case investigations. But then a couple weeks into that process of getting that off the ground, she sent an email to a local epidemiologist saying, never mind, we're not going to do that anymore. We've got enough contact tracers. She also cited assistant city manager Colleen Bridger as putting the brakes on that. Mm-hmm. And there was a plan that they had developed, Metro Health had developed, to kind of slowly ramp up case investigators as the cases increased. I think the name of the plan was 70-15-90, and it's sort of convoluted, but the gist of it is basically that if you get up to 70 cases, you start training 15 new case investigators, and then if you get up to 90 cases a day, then you deploy them. And of course, everyone with the case numbers we have now, hundreds of cases a day, sometimes topping 1,000. That just seems quaint now to be talking about adding 15 case investigators if we get to 90 cases a day. So it was, and the story that Josh Fechter and I wrote quoted the epidemiologist who had been tapped to recruit and train these volunteers, and then who was told to, never mind, we don't need them. And she was quite upset about the entire situation, because she feels like we just lost a lot of time here in Bexar County when we could have had more people working on this.
It feels to me like the whole issue of contact tracing, which seems like a fundamental part of controlling the spread of this virus nationally, it seems like that's been a problem throughout the country. That this has been, I know, throughout the state of Texas, certainly. Greg Abbott talked about months ago a plan to ramp up contact tracing, and it doesn't feel like it's really worked in the way they expected. And you hear people saying, well, some people don't respond when they get calls, or they don't want to talk to people, and that's maybe been a challenge. But it just seems like that has been one component.
Well, yeah,
there's been a real failure there.
When you look at some of the other countries like China that have managed to get everything under control, they use much more coercive tactics. Yeah,
which is probably necessary.
Yeah, and here in America, where we have our freedoms, it's not very conducive to controlling a highly transmissible virus, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, that's and one of the things that was interesting about the story too is because it came a few days after you and Josh had worked on a story looking at some other emails related to Don Emmerich, and which revealed that Assistant City Manager Colleen Bridger was very unhappy with her and said that she was difficult to work with, and that sort of cast a new light on Don Emmerich's surprising decision to leave after being here only a few months. And then the story about the investigators, I think, provided a different spin, which is that she was, apparently trying to be really proactive in dealing with this, in contact tracing, and was not getting a lot of support, or was getting pushback within the city.
Yeah, I
right?
mean, like most stories, it's not just black and white. I don't think the story is just that Don Emmerich was impossible to work with, and that and
Right.
I mean, I think there were problems with the working relationship on both sides, and it was dysfunctional for reasons that both sides brought to the table, and unfortunately, there was dysfunction at a time when we needed things to be running very smoothly.
Yeah. Well, before we wrap things up, I wanted to talk a little bit about U.S. District 21, which I think is shaping up to be one of the most interesting congressional races in the state of Texas. It might be a stretch to call it a swing district, because this has been a reliably Republican district for a long time. You had Lamar Smith held that seat for 32 years. I don't think he ever won a general election by less than 20%, and in some cases didn't even have Democratic opposition. He would just have like a Libertarian or Green Party candidate. He stepped down in 2018, and Chip Roy, former chief of staff to U.S. Senator Ted Cruz, was the Republican nominee. And as we remember, 2018 was a really strong year for Democrats in Texas. Beto O'Rourke gave Ted Cruz a close race for the Senate. And in District 21, we saw a major shift to the Democrats. You had Joseph Kopser, an Austin tech entrepreneur who came within, I think, about 3% of beating Chip Roy. And we've seen recent polling that suggests that Chip Roy's Democratic opponent, Wendy Davis, former gubernatorial candidate, is within 1% of him. She has quite a bit more money than he does. Coming into July, she had $2.9 million cash on hand, and he had $1.7 million. Democrats you're starting to see the Cook Political Report, I think, recently declared it. I think they went from lean Republican to toss up. I may be getting that wrong, but I know that they made a recent change in their appraisal of this district. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, this is one that we just assumed was a Republican district. It was one that we kind of thought of it the same way we thought of, say, U.S. District 20, which is Joaquin Castro's district. That's just a Democratic district. It's the way it's going to be. And District 21 was that way for as far as Republican seats. And so what's going on here? And Greg, I'll start with you. I mean, do you think that there is a real chance?
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm still, I mean, considering how long Lamar Smith held this seat, and the fact that, as bad as 2018 was for Republicans, Chip Roy still got 50.2% of the vote. We'll see. But I mean, it does kind of call into question whether, I mean, clearly District 21 had been a reliably Republican district. But I mean, is it a district where, we're talking about a lot of suburban Republicans? I mean, it's a little better educated, a little higher income than your typical district. I mean, they've got a college graduation rate of about 44%. Yeah. And that's obviously higher than what we've got in a lot of other congressional districts in the San Antonio area. So, I mean, are we seeing Republicans who are maybe not Trumpers, just not hardcore, grassroots Republicans, but, maybe are conservative, and, at least in the context of the Republican Party today, it could even be considered moderate. I mean, is that what we're seeing in this district? And is that going to, not work out really well for Chip Roy? I mean, are they fed up with Trumpism and his support of it? And Chip Roy is, he's no Lamar Smith. I mean, Lamar Smith said some nutso stuff in his time in office. But he said it in such a nice way. He was like this, he was this,
that's right. Climate change. I don't know.
Yeah. He was like this friendly Alamo Heights guy. He seemed harmless. Chip Roy's not that guy. He's a former, chief of staff for Ted Cruz, and he's a bomb thrower. He's a bomb thrower. Yeah. He's we're in the pit of a recession, and he's effectively dumping all over unemployment relief. Increased federal benefits for people who have lost their jobs. He's a pretty rigid ideologue, and he doesn't try to smooth it over. It's
that's right.
Just very very edgy.
And I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you look at that, there are 10 counties in this district. The district basically goes from San Antonio up the I-35 corridor to South Austin. It has a lot of the hill country. And, it as you said, Alamo Heights, Terrell Hills, these are areas that, you have a substantial number of conservatives there, but it might not be the Ted Cruz type of conservative or the Chip Roy type of conservative. And we saw that because Lamar Smith, he had deep roots here, he would win Bexar County. I think that tends to be a really big chunk of the district. He would win Bexar County by 30% every time. Yeah, last time it was 2%. So that's a big
right. Yeah, exactly. And that goes, Lamar Smith, he was always, he helped build up the Republican Party in Bexar County. Like he was a party man. He worked doggedly in the 70s. He was a John Towers supporter, and he was the kind of Republican who was actually looking to build the party and make headway in Bexar County. And to do that, you can't, when you're facing when you're basically surrounded by Democrats, bomb throwing in the Chip Roy style was not the way to get support, to win support from conservative Democrats. So he was a completely different kind of politician.
Now, the one of the questions going forward will be whether Wendy Davis, who is best remembered for her filibuster in 2013 in opposition to a restrictive anti-abortion bill, if she will be, and she's not someone who has a long history in the district. She was a state senator from Fort Worth, and has lived in the Austin area for the last few years. But I think there will be the interesting thing will be to see if she will be the right messenger to make that challenge. One of the things I want to mention too is that we've seen some signs that this area has been changing as far back as 2017. When we saw John Courage win what was historically the most conservative city council district, District 9. And John Courage was somebody who had challenged Lamar Smith for that congressional seat. He had run as a Democrat and had run for various offices as a Democrat, and he was able to pull off District 9. Brian, when you look at that area of San Antonio, the northeast side, and maybe we could even extend that to Alamo Heights and Terrell Hills, do you see that there's some kind of just demographic change happening that we hear about people moving from other parts of the country? Do you sense that there's just some kind of change happening within that part of San Antonio?
I was going to say, more to the point of the district that Wendy Davis is running in. I drove through that over the weekend, and there were Chip Roy and Trump signs everywhere along the highway. So anecdotally, that was what I saw. Courage. I think he's a unique case. I don't know if there's much change going. Alamo Heights has always been more of a moderate Republican stronghold.
Right. But as far as growth in the district, I think you have to look outside of Terrell Hills and Alamo Heights. Every year when the U.S. Census updates, population numbers, we find that, communities between, San Antonio and Austin are routinely among the fastest growing in the country. And so, we've clearly got a lot of people migrating to this area, and we know that a lot of them are coming from out of state, primarily California. I mean, that's the biggest producer of immigrants for this area. And I mean, with the kind of growth we're seeing, I mean, the politics of the district will change. I mean, it's just a question of how it'll change. And I think we'll probably see maybe a more moderate republicanism, maybe, and how quickly that will change. And I don't know. I mean, given, maybe it's changing faster than we think. And, I think that if so, it's probably going to benefit Wendy Davis, I would think.
Yeah. And we hear so much about suburban conservative voters who have been, who maybe supported Trump in 2016 with some misgivings and are now unhappy with him. And so I just can't help but feel that Chip Roy's fate in some way, even though he's only representing one district within Texas, that his fate is somewhat tied to Donald Trump's, that whatever is affecting Donald Trump's political situation, that it might also come into play with Chip Roy. We're gonna leave things there, and we'll catch up with you all again next week. Hope you all are doing well. Take care.